Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Alex. And today we're going to build a tool that will make my life as a YouTuber a little bit easier. So if you take a look at the background, you will see there's a blue light. And I'm actually using the Philips HUE to light up my office. And I maintain a preset for whenever I do YouTube videos, but I also want to be able to quickly change between my presets. And this is a perfect task for building a CLI. And luckily, there's also a Spring project, just focus on that, which is called Spring Shell. So today we will build a small tool so that I can change presets using Philips HUE. So without further ado, let's code. The main idea of this tutorial is to use Spring Shell. I don't want to spend too much time looking at the Philips HUE API unless you're interested, then just drop a comment down below. But this is what it looks like. Philips HUE has a device that is called a bridge, and that is exposing an API that we can use. There are groups and there are scenes. So a group is just a set of lights. And you can see I have the lights 3, 6, 1, 7, 4, 5. And you don't see them, but I have a couple of lights in the studio and I grouped them all together and named the group studio. This is one thing that we need. And the other one is what is a scene? So you can see there's a scenes resource, which is a collection, and a scene has an ID and it has a name. And YouTube Blue is the current scene. But there's also another one, which is called YouTube Green. And I want to be able to toggle between them easily. So this is what we're going to build. So let's go to the IDE. Quick check of the dependencies. I'm using the Spring Boot 3.2 milestone release. This is because I want to use the new REST client. So I bring in the Spring Boot starter web dependency as well as the Spring Shell starter. And I configured this project using the Spring initializer, so it brings everything that I need here. Now, quick look at the code. And again, I leave timestamps down below so you can skip ahead. So I already started modeling the Philips HUE connection. So first of all, you can see that there are the properties, the bridge, which is the IP address where the bridge is running locally in my network, and the username, which is a token for a specific client, in that case, our demo application. I'm exposing the REST client to the Spring context, and I set the base URL to where I expect the bridge to be found, along with the base API endpoint, which is this one. And then this is being used in a component that is called HUE, and this is what we're going to use to manage Philips HUE. So you can see the first endpoint is to collect all the groups. It's just a GET request to groups that I had just in the browser. And the other one is the scenes request, which will just return all the scenes. And I modeled both of them using a HUE dictionary resource because they both behave the same. Let's just go back to the browser. So you can see this is the scenes endpoint. And this is the dictionary. It has the ID here and then the object which contains all the data. And I'm interested in the ID and the name. That's all that's relevant for now. And if I go to the groups, it's the same pattern. So it has the ID here and it has a name. So what I did is I just created a HUE resource which has the ID and the name, and a HUE dictionary resource which provides the mapping. So I also created a custom JSON deserializer. If you're unfamiliar with how that works, just check the video that I linked here. So we're just iterating over all the IDs in the resource, and the field names will give us the ID. So I can say, okay, this is the ID. And then I collect the name from the resource, and then I build the HUE resource, which is the ID and the name. It's really that simple. So these are the reading endpoints where I just get all the groups and the scenes. And then there is the enable endpoint, enabling a scene. So what that does is it requires the scene ID and the group ID, and it will apply a scene to a group. In that case, the scene that we select will be applied to all the lights of that specific group. And that's a put request that requires the scene as part of the body and the group as part of the URL, and it will just change the lighting. So this is all there is to it, and you can check the code in the repository that I've linked below. So let's talk about the Spring CLI, and this is where the fun begins. So let's start with something easy, with the groups. Now, you might find older tutorials that use the annotations shell method, for example, but I'm using the most recent version, and that looks a little bit different. So we will group commands by certain functionality. So let me show you what I mean. I want to be able to do something like this, HUE groups list. And that should give us all groups, right? So this is what I want to do. And this is, let me also do the other one, HUE scenes ls should give us all scenes. Then This might look familiar because it's the same way the Git CLI behaves, or Docker, for example. And I really like that approach of having commands and subcommands. So that means the list command is performed against the group subcommand and so on. And in the previous Spring Shell version, that wasn't that easy because there weren't really any subcommands. The way you could manage this is using white spaces. With the current version, we have real subcommands. So let's start with the group commands. There's the command annotation, and the name is an array. So that's groups. I can give it a description. That's not an array, that's wrong. Copilot got this wrong. List or groups. So, and in order to do this, let's actually keep this easy. We start with something easy to show you how this actually works. Command equals the list command, list or groups. Well, yeah, that's not ideal. Let's rename that to manage groups. And then we have a command to list all the groups. So we do list, and it returns a string, which then gets printed, return group ls. Let's actually start that to see that it's working. And in order for Spring to pick up these commands, I have to enable them here. So that's similar to the component scan, but it's called command scan. So then Spring will just look up all the commands. And you can see this is the nesting I've applied here. It has command groups, and then the nested command is ls. So if I go to app and start this now, we can see we are in a shell down here. And there's always the built-in command help, so we can issue help. And what we can see is that our command has been picked up. So it says groups ls, list all groups. So we can already say groups ls. And groups ls is just what we returned here, so it will return the string. Okay, let's get out of here. So we can hit exit, and as we can see, it hangs. It doesn't really exit. So the question is why? So I kill the application here. So the reason it doesn't stop is because I brought in the Spring Boot Starter web dependency, and that of course spins up a web application server. So I don't want this. And I brought in a dependency because I need the REST client. What we can do is we can go to the application properties, and we can say, let me check. So it's Spring main web application type none. So that should prevent the application from starting a web server. Let's do this again. If I run the app now, let's see if exit works. And we can see it finishes. So let's go back to the application properties, because there are a few more things that we don't want. You can see it shows the Spring banner here. It shows all the logging, and that's not really useful when we eventually have a command line application. So we turn that off. Logging level for the root logger, I turn the logging only to error because I don't want to see these info messages. And then the banner is off. So let's start this one more time and check it. Okay, we can see there are no logs or the banner anymore. So exit, I'm out of here. Cool, let's get to the fun part and bring in our HUE CLI. So this was just a placeholder. We can now use the HUE API. So let's inject this here. Private val HUE, that's the HUE API. And let's get all the groups. So that's HUE groups. And then we can return groups join to string. So let's give it a try if that already works. So we start the application, we are in the shell, and let's do groups ls. And it works. So we can see there is Studio, that's the name that I've assigned, and the ID. And then there's also, this is German, unfortunately. I think it's a preset for Philips HUE in that language. It says Entertainment Area 1. So that also works. Now let's quickly also do the same for the scenes. So we start with a new command. Let me actually copy this over because I'm a little bit lazy. So we create a new command. I do it in the same file. So this is for the scenes. It manages the scenes, and it's the scene command. And we list all scenes here. So this is also list. It says scenes, and we request the scenes, and we return scenes joined to string. Let's give this a try. If I now enter help, you can see the new command has been picked up. So it has list all scenes, list all groups. So groups ls is what we've done before. That still works. And now list the scenes. So we can see there are a lot of them. They mostly have German names. Again, they are the presets. So this is funny. It says hell. So this is not hell like the English term, but it means very bright. What I'm interested in are these two. So YouTube Blue is the current preset that I'm using. And we're going to switch this to YouTube Green in a second. So let me just show you one more way of formatting this output. This looks nice already, but we could also achieve this doing something different because we have a table builder available. And let me show you what that looks like. So I have to provide a model and the data is HUE, where are we, scenes? And this should look correct already. So this is our data model. It needs to be an array. And then we can return the table builder, which needs our, why did I call this mode? It needs to be called model like this. And now we can style this. We can say add inner border, border style, And there are multiple border styles that we can pick. So I pick border style, yeah, fancy sounds fancy. Add inner border, and then we have to build it. We can also specify how much space should be used for rendering. We can let's make this 80. That should be more than enough. Let's remove this and we return. Oh no, we're already returning the table builder. So that also returns a string. Let's quickly run this and check. So if we now do scenes ls, we can see this is much heavier. It comes with a table. I usually try to keep it simple. So the final thing that we need to do is add the command to change the scene, which is what this is all about. So I add this to the scene commands and I call this, I want to call this enable a scene. And so this has the function enable. And now we can provide parameters. So I need the scene string and I need the group. Both are the IDs respectively. So now I can just say HUE enable scene. Oh, come on, scene. Scene group. I can specify these parameters using their names as -- scene -- group. Or I could use positional arguments. So the first parameter that doesn't have a name is then considered the scene. So let's start the application again. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So what we want to do, let's see if the command is there. Help, okay, enable scene is there. So now we need to list the groups. Okay, we still know the studio, which is this thingy here, has the ID 1. And we also need the scenes. And YouTube Blue is active. I'm interested in changing this to YouTube Green. So I just copy the ID here. And now let's see if that works. Scenes enable. And again, first thing is the scene. So that's this one. And then the group is 1. So let's do this. And it looks like it's green now, right? So you can see in the background, the Philips HUE light strip just turned green. So let's go back to blue because that's more my vibe. So we just say scenes enable. And I could have done this here. Group 1 and then dash scene scene. So I'm now going back to blue, but you can see this time I didn't use the positions, but I used the names. So that's a group and scene. So this works nicely, but I don't want to use ID or anything to spin up the application every time. I want to use a native binary. So if we go back to the build file, we have to enable another plugin, which is this one. So now we get a new task in Gradle. So once that finishes, there's a new task which is built and it's not there yet. Let me refresh this again. So it's there now. It says native compile. And this is what we want to do. In order for this to work, we need the GraalVM. So if I'm checking my Java version here, you can see I'm using the GraalVM already. So this works. And now what I can do is do native compile and just trigger off that task. All right, it's a solid 2 minutes later because the build takes a little bit of time. But if we now check the build directory, there is native and native compile. We can see there is our application. So let's actually go to the terminal and go to build. Where is it? Build native compile. Let's check the application. So it's here, Spring HUE. And now I can just invoke groups. And we can see how fast that is, right? So I invoke it here, and this is the result already. So it gives me the 2 groups. Doing this works. Scenes also should work. Yep, all good. So let's pick up the YouTube Green again. Where is it? Let me do this and just do Spring Scenes enable green for group 1. And that's a wrap. Spring Shell offers many more features that are actually worth taking a look at. So let me know if you want to see a deep dive of the Spring Shell, or if we should also explore the Philips HUE API, if that is what you're interested in. I hope that was useful. Please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.